Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Slane Knightley, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the topics on building a base in XCOM 2 and how to lay out your facilities. So fortunately, unlike the original XCOM, building positioning doesn't matter quite as much. There are really only two things that you'll want to keep in mind. First is that here in the bottom left corner, these two areas are the best places to build your power stations because they have power coils underneath these, which will give you additional power when you upgrade the building there. So you're going to want to build your two power plants down in the bottom left. Now, depending upon which area starts open with you, it might take you quite some time to dig there, so you might have to build a temporary power station and then dismantle it and move it later. But if you're fortunate and you start off with this area open, you should be able to just drill down here and immediately start off by building that power relay there, which will be a great savings for you. In addition, the other thing to keep in mind is the workshop. Because unlike in the previous XCOM, you don't get bonuses for having buildings stationed next to each other. So for example, you don't want to necessarily have a laboratory and then another laboratory next to it. There's no adjacency type bonus. The only exception to this is the workshop. When you build a workshop, you're able to staff it with engineers, which are able to create these little gremlin robots, which basically act as engineers themselves. And then if you upgrade it, you can get another engineer in there to staff for two more robots. So basically, it turns one engineer into two, but they can only work in the adjacent buildings. So you want to make sure that you have engineer slots available in the buildings that are near your workshop. So resistance comms make an excellent choice to build next to your workshop here. So as you can see, I have my two engineers in here, and then all four of the gremlins are working in these two resistance comms. The other buildings that can benefit from it are the Provings Ground, which also has an engineer required for it, which increases the project speed. The Advanced Warfare Center, which helps increase the healing rate of your troops. And then of course the power plants as well can use the additional engineers. And the Psi Lab as well, but that's not as urgent. So basically, those are all the kind of buildings that you want to station near the workshop if possible. For example, here the laboratory has no benefit from this, but since I have all the gremlins working anyway, it's fine. So that's something to keep in mind. Other than that, you don't really have to worry about the positioning of the buildings. There's no reason to stick, a laboratory next to another lab, Psi Lab or anything. There's no benefits from that. So I also want to talk to you a bit about early building priority and a few tricks or basically tips I've found from playing the game. I'd like to kind of help prevent you from making the same kind of mistakes I did. So two very important buildings that you'll want to build early. You'll definitely want to go for the Guerrilla Tactics School as soon as possible. There are two upgrades in here, well, three upgrades that are really important. Squad Size 1 and then 2, although 2 doesn't come till later in the game, so you don't necessarily have to rush it for the building for that. But Squad Size 1 you'll want to get as soon as possible. This gives you one extra squad member, which is a tremendous boost to the firepower of your squad and makes a tremendous difference in combat. Another really good skill here that you want to try and grab early is Vulture. This causes enemies to drop an additional item every time they drop loot. So if you grab this early, that adds up to a whole lot of additional items like improved scopes, better stocks, all the different, more of the implant boosts, more cores so that you can do more advanced experimental projects. So it eventually adds up to quite an additional amount of resources that you'll have later on to help your squad members. The other building, it isn't quite as urgent to rush it out, but the Advanced Warfare Center helps a great deal. So it does, if you stock like an engineer in here, and just on its own I believe, I'll have to double check, but it increases the healing rate of your troops, which is certainly nice. If you have a bunch of people out for 30 days, if you can double the healing rate, that's amazing. Get those troops back in action even sooner. And it also allows you to retrain soldier abilities, which is good if you made a mistake and accidentally took an ability that you turns out you don't really want and isn't terribly useful for you, the way your squad composition is laid out. You can do that. But the main advantage is that what it does is this gives your soldiers a chance to get a special, unique ability outside of their current class. So for example, if your sniper levels up, he might get an ability from the grenadier class or from the support class, which can give them a whole bunch of additional powerful skills and can combo really nicely in ways that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. What this does is give them a special ability at a certain rank outside of their own class. So for example, once your sniper reaches sergeant, he might gain a sergeant level ability. But it determines which level or which rank the ability comes from immediately once the building is built. So in this case, if your character would gain an ability at the sergeant level, if they're already a higher level than sergeant, they won't gain access to the ability. So it doesn't retroactively give them abilities. And that's why you're going to want to try and build this as soon as possible, so that way you can ensure your soldiers do gain these special abilities. And these abilities combo quite nicely and have a lot of special interactions and effects that you might not expect. They can be simple abilities that are just always nice to have. Like for example, I've gotten lightning reflexes on a grenadier, which is nice ability to always have to avoid getting overwatched attacks. And they can be just flat out ridiculously overpowered. For example, on one of my snipers, I ended up getting the Grenadier's Rupture ability, which is fantastic because it only counts as one action. So my sniper can now actually move and then use the Rupture ability, which instead of having to use a pistol on his second, because he's used his initial movement, he can use the Rupture ability instead, which has the damage level of the sniper rifle after he's already moved, and it combos with the actual abilities of Rupture itself. So as you can see, there are quite a few neat combinations that you can get, so it's definitely a good idea to try and build the Advanced Warfare Center early if possible.
The spokesman took...
Now obviously you don't want to cripple your start by rushing for this building immediately instead of building the things you want for the initial setup, but it is a good tip to go ahead and try and build this as soon as possible without affecting your initial start, because these additional abilities outside of the soldier's class can be a tremendous improvement to your combat potential of your soldiers. And even if it's an ability that's not that great, like you get lightning reflexes on a sniper that you don't plan on getting shot at eventually, it's always good to have more abilities that provide more flexibility, as you never know when you might have to rush at the end of a level to evac, and that might come in handy. So always having more abilities, even if they turn out not to be the best for the specific class you're looking at, can always be helpful. So you'll definitely be looking forward to getting that as soon as possible without crippling your start. There are a number of other buildings. The laboratory is, of course, a good building that you want to build fairly early. At least on medium difficulty, I wasn't finding it terribly urgent to increase the speed of my research. I've also started another game on hard difficulty, and it's a little bit more important, but if you're playing on an easier difficulty, you might delay this a little bit to help you start. Resistance comms are, of course, good because you'll want to get as much supplies as possible, and these allow you to get additional contacts. And as you can see here, at this point in the game, which is fairly late in the game, but not quite at the end yet, I've got both resistance comms arrays up to their improved ability. The Psi Lab, of course, is good to allow you to train Psi troops. It's not necessarily an urgent rush unless you are intending to go for psionic troops immediately. You can probably get away with holding off on this. I mean, if you see here in this particular game, it's down here in the bottom right. It was one of the later buildings that I built, even after like the Shadow Chamber. So it's not necessarily something you have to rush. Although Psi troops are definitely extremely powerful in their own right. So it's kind of up to you on which way to go with that. So hopefully this guide was helpful to you. I just wanted to. There's nothing groundbreaking here, but I wanted to point out some of the tips that I would have appreciated knowing earlier, such as the workshop, being able to build those gremlins to provide additional engineers, basically, and then of course just how amazing the Advanced Warfare Center can be with providing such special abilities to you. And of course, if any of you have any additional tips, guides on your thoughts on the build order, go ahead and include them in the comments below, and hopefully help other people out. Thanks. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please consider liking the video or subscribing. Either way, I appreciate you spending your time with me. Thanks for watching.